Amy Baxter, editor of Retail Leader, and welcome to Trend Talk. Every week on Trend Talk, we identify a retail trend and give it a deep dive with an industry insider. This week, we're once again looking at recent consumer behavior trends and this return to the new normal in retail. My guest today is Diane Wehrle, Marketing and Insights Director at Springboard, a provider of data and intelligence on customer activity in stores and destinations. Springboard recently published a June National Retail Consumer Report, and we're going to get into some of the findings to better understand how consumers are returning to the new normal emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. So Diane, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Springboard?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amy. I'm Diane Wehrle. I'm Marketing and Insights Director at Springboard. I'm one of the two founding directors of the business. We've been incorporated since 2002. You can probably hear from the accent that we've started in the UK, but we now have a hugely successful business out in the US, which we're absolutely delighted about. And we've got a lot of really amazing clients out stateside on both East Coast and West Coast. And we specialise at Springboard in looking and understanding consumer behaviour in bricks and mortar retail destinations. So it's about stores and destinations, whether that's downtown, shopping malls, shopping centres, strip malls, anywhere we go out to shop and to dine and to make leisure trips for understanding the customer behaviour.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, Springboard recently released this June report and the US Downtown Index, which tracked pedestrian traffic and sentiments about consumer behaviour. So I'm wondering if you could tell us some of the top takeaways from the latest index.
Well, it's been really fascinating. And if I can just go back a little bit and explain why we do it, because our core business is monitoring pedestrian traffic in stores and in destinations. But we recognise that we're in immensely difficult times and very interesting times. None of us have been through a pandemic before. I certainly have been through a number of recessions before, so I'm able to understand the way we come out of the recession, but clearly none of us have been through a pandemic. And so the path to recovery is unknown. And the impact on consumer behaviour is unknown, and therefore how ped traffic will be impacted is unknown. So in addition to ped traffic, we felt it was really important to understand consumer motivations. What's going to generate and drive that ped traffic? So they may not be going now, they may be going less frequently or maybe spending longer, but how does that get behind the ped traffic and really understand it, which is where we came to create this consumer report. So we're actually surveying consumers through an online panel every month to see that change and see the incremental shift in our behaviour. And so that's really where we started from, because we felt ped traffic was ultimately the end game, but we needed to understand what was happening behind it. So what we looked at, rather than just do a simple survey and go through the questions, which is really, really boring, we devised the survey to look at really three key themes in consumer behaviour and what we felt were the overriding themes in the way that people use bricks and mortar destinations. So the first theme is about how comfortable consumers feel about visiting malls and downtowns and shopping centres, and whether they are also going out to shop or to dine out, or either or both. The second theme is about how their shopping habits have changed due to COVID. Are they shopping more locally or going to bigger downtowns, and how the COVID and maybe the changes in their lifestyles through working at home has changed the frequency of shop and of course the transference or the migration to online shopping. Really, really important, and I'm sure you've got questions about that. And the third theme is about working patterns. I mean, we all know most of us have been working at home for lots of last year and part of this year, and how's that impacting on consumer habits and therefore ultimately ped traffic? You know, are we shopping or visiting bricks and mortar destinations different times of the day, different days of the week, for different things? All of those things are really, really important, and they're impacted on by the way we work. So those are the really key themes. And so that's the thrust of the report, and then we can go into some more details.
Yeah, let's dive in. I think one of the things I found really interesting was among the changes in shopping habits due to COVID. For instance, this June report found fewer consumers said they buy at least half of their non-food purchases online compared to May. So what does this tell us about some of the COVID-influenced shopping habits? Will this huge rush to online shopping that we saw during the pandemic continue to wane throughout the rest of the year? And then I think the question there is, how should retailers be thinking about that trend if they've put all this investment into online and it's really going to wane away as people return back to brick and mortar?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we obviously, when we were in the depths of COVID and people were staying at home, the only choice we had was to shop online, and we certainly didn't want to go into stores or destinations. But we're social beings. We love
Mhm.
physical and mental and social contact. And the first time we see it in the US, we see it in the UK. The minute that we as individuals have a chance to go out to stores and to destinations, we take that opportunity. Yes, we can be cautious, we may be a little slow, we may change how we do it, but we start to go back. And it's very important to appreciate that whilst online had this huge uplift during COVID, there has been already a shift back to bricks and mortar. And we're not through COVID yet. We know that we're still in the grip of COVID to some degree. We don't know whether there'll be a third or fourth wave. We don't know the variants. So we're all got still to be careful. But what we're seeing is this move back to bricks and mortar. And, it's relatively cautious at the moment. But as people feel more confident, as the vaccine program rolls out and people feel feel safer, that will accelerate. And whilst I don't believe we will get back to where we were pre-COVID in terms of the proportions of online to bricks and mortar, we will certainly make up ground.
Right. So I do want to point to the other part of the report that looked at the amount of employees who continue to work from home. So during the pandemic, as you said, virtually all offices were closed. Employees were forced to work from home. Now we're seeing many people actually want to stay there and they don't want to return to the office. And actually the percentage of employees who worked out of the home every day rose from 43% in May to 48% in June. So how does the work from home status affect shopping habits?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. So as you say, we all work from home where we could, where if we didn't have to go out of the home, we didn't. But actually, what we're seeing is this drift back to offices. Now, I think there's a big thing about hybrid working model now. I think, employers recognise that we can work successfully at home.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, over the past year, most of us have spent a lot of the year buying products that enable us to work out whether that's tech or desks and chairs. So we're all kitted up for doing that. But despite that, people are still moving out of the home, as you say, Amy. There is a sort of a bit of a movement towards moving out of home. So in May, 43% of people don't work from home. In June, 48% of people don't work from home. So we are leaving our homes to work, but I think the difference will be is whether we go back full time. And I think in large degree, most people will not go back 5 days a week into an office. I think we all recognise that the success of working at home is now established and it's much more economic and it's greater quality of life working from home. So I think there'll be that very distinct split between home working and office working. But what will happen, of course, is that if you're not in the office 5 days a week, that will impact how you shop. Mm-hmm. So, we used to go to the office in the morning, in peak hours, we'd go out of our office at lunchtime to buy a sandwich or to buy a salad, and we'd probably go into a store when we were there. We clearly won't be doing that because we'll be at home for at least maybe 2 or 3 days a week, or if we do that, we'll shop more locally. So our smaller neighbourhood centres might do much better and continue to prosper. They have been the most resilient during COVID. We've seen smaller dots and peg traffic in our smaller neighbourhood centres and in larger downtowns, and that's been the same in the US as in the UK, exactly the same pattern. And so this is likely to continue if we continue to work at home, and it's likely that we will. On the other side of the coin, when we do go into the office, we're likely to extend our working day. We're likely to go out in the evening, either to shop or to dine and to visit friends. So we're likely to see in the bigger downtowns and the shopping malls more activity in the evenings, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Saturday, the weekends will become more important because if we're working at home, we won't necessarily be able to get to large downtowns during the week, but we may actually go out for a specific trip on a Saturday and make a really great day of it. So actually the difference between work days and weekends will change. We'll see bigger peaks on a Saturday. So we're likely to see these changes come through, but they will be incremental. They're not going to be straight away. They're going to be over the next few months. And at Springboard, what we're doing is tracking that change in head traffic alongside the motivations and the mindset that drive that change.
Yeah, interesting. So here in the US, we're, as you and I are talking, we're just before the 4th of July holiday weekend, just before one of those big Saturdays. So can you talk about some of the retail predictions based on the consumer sentiment for the holiday. Do you think more people will be shopping or less? And how does the holiday impact those who have maybe refrained from returning to brick and mortar stores up until this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, around about half of all consumers we surveyed said they will be going out over July 4th weekend, which is fantastic. And around half also said they'll be shopping and dining, which is great news for hospitality. And actually, we did the same survey on Memorial Day weekend, and around again half of people said they'd be going out around Memorial Day weekend, which again is really positive. And that was a few weeks ago, so we were slightly further back along the COVID timeline. So this is really good news for our bricks and mortar stores, and I think people will feel more relaxed going out at the weekend. Congestion will be less, they'll be able to space out their visits. So people clearly have got that enthusiasm for going out at the weekend, and because they've been working at home all week, they haven't had that social interaction during the week. So by the time you get to July 4th weekend, they're very, very keen. So I think what's going to happen is over the next few months and even years, we're going to see greater peaks on public holidays, because people are desperate to get out of their house and desperate to see some interaction and engage with people. So this is very much the beginning of the process, but it's very, very encouraging for retailers.
Yeah. So you touched on this already, but I always like to end on this question. What are your predictions for the rest of the year about shopping habits? And maybe what are some of the good signs that retailers are paying attention to, like this 4th of July holiday weekend and the way consumers are feeling?
Yeah, so predictions out of the pandemic, that's a challenging one. I mean, I've predicted out of a recession, but out of the pandemic is interesting. What I'm envisaging and what we've seen over the past few months, both here in the UK and in the US, and I think it's very interesting because the patterns of activity, the patterns in head traffic in the UK have been different from the US, because we've had forced lockdowns where the whole country has closed its retail doors, whereas in the US it varies from state to state, and consequently head traffic trends have been much flatter. So you haven't had the peaks that we've had in the UK when we've reopened, but then we haven't had the troughs either. So we've seen that variation lessened perhaps, and we've seen this huge volatility. So what we're seeing at the moment is that head traffic in the US is still very, very much lower than it was in 2019, and we're comparing things to 2019 rather than 2020, because I think everyone is ignoring 2020 as an abnormal year. So we're looking at from being 63% below the 2019 level in January, it's moved up to around 55% below by the first 2 weeks, by the end of May and into the first 2 weeks of June. So it's about half of what it was in 2019. So there's a fair way to go to make up to where we were before COVID hit. But what I think we'll see is this incremental rise in head traffic, and I think we're likely to see a rise up to sort of 20-25% below 2019 through the fall. And I think whether or not we get improved beyond that will depend on whether the vaccine program, of course, and whether that third wave or fourth wave does not come to pass, and people don't have to retreat back into home. I mean, in the UK, I'm saying that head traffic is about 25% below where it was in 2019, so it's higher than in the US. But we've had these peaks and troughs which have sort of forced it up almost. And I'm anticipating that half that gap will be narrowed by the end of the year in the UK, and I'm envisaging half the gap will be narrowed in the US. So we're looking probably at 20-25% below 2019, partly because people are not working from home as much, not in their offices as much. So people won't take as many trips into downtowns and malls as perhaps they once did. There's been transference online. And also, I think we mustn't forget the lack of tourism, international tourism, which plays an impact. Big city centres like New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, all of these guys really require that international tourism, and there's simply not getting it at the moment. And that will impact big downtowns. So, we're going to see a creep up, which is great, but we won't be hitting 2019.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Interesting. Great. Well, thank you, Diane, so much for those insights. I think everyone in retail is paying really, really close attention to these last few months as shoppers come back. So there's a lot more that we could unpack here about these habits, but that's all the time we have for today. So we'll see you back here next week with another retail trend.